Well, Caroline's yawning.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I
terrible.
started yawning as the countdown hit 1.
So terrible news. We are too tired to banter. And
well,
also,
we're too tired to banter, and also we have way too many books to talk about.
That's where I'm really getting at. We're forbidding ourselves from getting off topic. We're gonna really try because we haven't done a TBR Tuesday because we did our Valentine's one, but we haven't done like an official wrap up one since January, and it's been a full month. And we both read a lot of books.
Yeah. I have read more books this month than I did in January, which is ironic given that February is the shortest month.
Yeah.
Unclear
You're just like packing them in there.
I am, especially like the past 3 days. I don't know what's going on.
Every time your story update, I'm like, oh, another one.
I did. Several of them have been novellas, to be fair.
But still, that's a lot of hedgehog novellas.
Yeah. There were a lot of hedgehog novellas.
To each their own.
Okay, well, so I'm at least going to limit myself only to books that I recommend.
Yes. And I reread a lot of series for reasons. So I'll just like briefly talk about the series as a whole, but not individual books because, again, I don't want this to be endless.
And there are some that we're going to do full episodes on. So like, we will touch on, but not go into. Yeah. Do you want to? Are we doing this chronologically, or do you want to start with contemporaries?
Yeah, I've got it chronologically, which is probably best, so I don't forget anything.
That's fair.
But before we do, hello,
hi,
welcome to Romancer TBR.
Welcome.
I am Hannah,
and I'm Caroline.
I was like, did she forget her name now this time? Because I forgot my name last time. I'm like relatable.
No, one of us has to be the spirit of the podcast.
I'll be the horny ghost.
You'll throw yourself on that grenade.
I will,
if you must.
It'll be hard, but
it's a dirty job. But somebody's got to do it. No bantering, Hannah. We have too many books.
Okay, we can do this.
Yes.
The first series I'm going to talk about that Caroline also read book 1 for her book club is the Gilded Age Heiresses series by Harper St. George. Now, I reread the first 3 books in anticipation of the 4th book, The Duchess Takes a Husband, which was Camille and someone. I'm like looking at my wall. I'm like, I don't know. I won't name it because Caroline hasn't. She hasn't read the other one, so it'll be a little bit of a spoiler. So someone it is.
Oh. I thought you just couldn't remember.
Well, yeah, I couldn't, but it's okay. I'm spinning that.
Your brain is doing you a favor.
Yeah, truly, I don't like. There's nothing there.
That's fair.
Johnny.
It's a man. He doesn't need a name.
He's hot. He's real hot. Go him. There's a great mirror scene. So in that series, obviously, it starts off with Camille getting an arranged marriage to a duke. He's horrible. And then that kind of like spirals into what's the first sister? So there's
August
and someone. Her younger sister, Violet. I think it's Violet. No,
maybe. That sounds right.
This is off to a marvelous start because her book's my favorite. What is this? Yeah, Violet. Fuck yeah. Okay, so Violet, her book's my favorite. That's The Devil and the Heiress. Yeah, so good. Every time I hear "Cruel Summer" by Taylor Swift, he looks up grinning like a devil. Is this book because he was like eating her out and he like looked up. And then she was like,
and grinned at her like a
devil.
Like a devil.
Well, it's in the title. That's a really fun road trip one. That I definitely forgot in our road trip episode. So
shame.
And then book 3 was also really good. And then book 4, like I said, that's the one that hasn't come out yet. That comes out in May 23rd. So sometime. But I'm excited for you to read that series. Because, in my opinion, they only get better. Or, I mean, technically book 2 is my favorite, but, like, they're all very good. You have any notes, I guess, on the book 1 that you read?
Yeah, I just read book 1 with, I almost said Romancer TBR. Nope. Rip your own bodice.
She's got it.
Also, well, I guess ours is here 3 words instead of 4. Whatever. I have a Fable book club. Hannah's in it. You
I
can
sure
join
am.
it. I have the link to it in my whatever, like, link tree type situation.
You know,
There's
it's
a link
also
that goes
Caroline's,
to a bunch of other links.
like, our links are linked in our Instagram link.
Yeah.
So-
link. You'll find it. I believe in
you
your
will.
ability to sleuth out this
You
link.
know what I can fucking do? I can put it in the show notes.
Oh my god, we have show notes.
Yeah.
Those are so helpful.
I know.
As evidenced by last week's episode.
There were so many.
Oh, y'all, I hope you actually check our show notes.
I really do.
Because sometimes the most unhinged things have to be included. Anyway, we read The Heiress Gets a Duke for February. It was good. I mean, I ended up giving it like 4 stars. It was interesting seeing other people's thoughts because some people were like really did not like August, which was not my problem. I thought she was fine. She wasn't like my favorite or anything.
Yeah.
But
because that
strong feelings there.
That was like my first book of the month that I loved. Because it was in book of the month in like 2021. And I read it, and let me tell you, if I'm being real, that's the first time I ever encountered like pre-cum in a book. And I was like, whoa, okay. He's doing that in the library. I was not prepared.
They did do that in the library.
Yeah. I was very new to the genre. I was like pretty new to like sex and books in general. So I thought it was like the hottest thing I ever read. I gave it 5 stars. I was like, wow, incendiary. I had like 4 peppers on my spice scale. I was
Scales
going
change
for
over
it.
time.
They sure do. Oh my god, I get random people liking ones from way back when, and I'm like, that is not accurate. Please don't take that into consideration. And then I reread it just recently, and while it was still good, and I rounded up to 4, I gave it a 3.5 this time, because I know what's coming, and I know that I like all of the other ones better. This one does like
That's
good.
Fair.
Like, it lays the groundwork well for the rest of the series. But their parents really piss me off, and or her parents, I guess. And they don't necessarily get better, but like they take a little bit less shit going forward.
I think that was it just took like a little too long, because by the end I was like, girl, you get to marry this dude that you're already into.
You made out with him after he was like half naked brawling with the dude. Like
this is a man that you're already in love with, and he's taken the time to show you that like he actually needs the money for like important he's not just like a guy who wants to go gamble all her money away. He's like, hey, I have like thousands of people depending on me for their livelihood, and I have all this debt that I am not responsible for incurring, but like I have to now pay these debts.
And spoiler, I believe it was kind of like a miracle save, because then didn't he like find that his father had like mines or something?
Somebody was that like his steward was
like
stealing from him.
Yeah, so then once he didn't end up needing her money, then that was then she was like, okay. I mean, it wasn't as simple as that. Sometimes I do love to see an ending where someone doesn't always get like that easy fix, because a lot of times, you know, a character will have like reservations about marrying someone of the upper class, and then they'll miraculously be someone of the higher class, like in Seduce Me at Sunrise, right? Because Kev escalated classes, and then he felt a little bit better, and then they got married. Like, things like that happen, and it's not like angering. Sometimes it just feels a little bit too easy.
It's a little Deus Ex Machina. It's a little like that doesn't feel like you didn't have to make the hard choice.
But I do think that they get better. I
mean, it's good. I would recommend that, even if like just that book, not just like the whole series.
You know,
we did the thing where we talked way too long.
I know. But to be fair, you had a book club about it, so if people are in that,
it's relevant.
We're relevant. Yeah. So maybe once Caroline reads the entire series, we'll do a full episode on that, because clearly we have words. Then you can go.
The first book that I finished in February was a contemporary.
Ooh.
It is I read The Arc of Happy Place by
Oh,
Emily
yes, you
Henry.
did.
I'm so cute. The thing about you is that there's sometimes where I can be like, "Oh, you would really hate this," like the Grace Burrows that I read also this month, but we talked about it in Valentine's Day, so I don't need to. There's sometimes I'll read and I'll go, "Ooh, Hannah will not like this," or sometimes like with Tempe at Twilight, where I read and I go, "Wow, Hannah's gonna love this," and then there's sometimes that I read a book and I go, I have no idea.
I'll read it.
You're gonna have. I feel like you're gonna have strong feelings.
Yeah.
I have no idea which way they're gonna go, though. You might despise this book.
That's fun for me. So, our friend Susanna reads on Twitter, Instagram. So we've had multiple conversations about Emily Henry. Her favorite book before this was Beach Read, which was also my favorite book, and she says that this one's better than Beach Read in her opinion.
Interesting.
And so I do trust her on that.
Okay.
Because People We Meet on Vacation, like, I think that's maybe my least favorite, because I liked Book Lovers to an extent. And
I thought you didn't like Book Lovers.
I didn't, but I think I would rather reread that than People We Meet on Vacation, because like Book Lovers wasn't a bad book. The expectations I had were just different from what I got in that sense. But like, I still think it was like my review is like, I don't think this is a bad book, but it
just
did
wasn't
these
what
things.
you wanted.
Yeah. But People We Meet on Vacation, I probably wouldn't reread that one. Funnily enough, that's going to be a movie, which I probably will see. Sure. But I did really like Beach Read, and so hopefully this kind of is like a good indicator. I don't quite know.
I will be very curious to see. That's fascinating. The thing about this one is that it's dual timeline. It does the same thing that People We Meet on Vacation does, where it alternates chapters, where it goes back to like the beginning of their relationship. So you get to see the milestones in their relationship as it progresses and where they're at now. I will be very curious to see.
I mean,
out of that.
On a personal note, I want to love it because I love the pink cover. So I'll be sad if I don't.
Well, so for context, I love Emily. I mean, well, I haven't read her like young adult books, but her adult books I have loved and given 5 stars to all of them so far, including Happy Place. I think, like, I still consider Beach Read a romance. I think it lives in that gray area between romance and relationship fiction where, like, you can kind of fall on either side of the fence. Happy Place, I think, lives more in the gray area than Beach Read does. Which is interesting because it is spending so much time with Harriet and Wynn. Because, again, you have the dual timelines where you're seeing their relationship develop and they're doing the fake relationship or pretending to still be together. So, like, they're together a lot of the book. But they're also with their friends for most of the book.
Yeah.
And, like, this is the first... I mean, there are, like, side characters that are important in the other books, but this is the first one I've read that, like, they're not just, like, side character. Like, they're there the whole time. They're very important to the plot. And a lot of the book is about, like, the friend group, like, all of their relationships with each other.
Oh.
Like, a major theme of the book is, like, how you handle a relationship changing that you've had for, like, 10 plus years. And how, like, all of these people are growing up and going in different directions and changing as people. And some of them are really trying to hang on to the relationships that they had, like, in college.
Yeah.
And, like, how do you adjust your relationships with people as the years pass without completely losing them? I thought it was really interesting and well done. I, however, also have, like, friends who really hated this book. And
and
I can see valid criticism of it.
Yeah.
So, like, I understand why some people are not going to like this book. I personally really enjoyed it. My other thing about this, though, is that a lot of... this is petty. A lot of, like, not my friends, but just random reviews I've seen of this book are people mad that it is, like, very dark. Because they're like, look at the cover. It's called Happy Place. Why is it sad?
Well, they've read Beach Read, haven't they?
That was my exact... I was like, have you ever read any of Emily Henry's books? Because even the lightest of them is probably People We Meet on Vacation. And even that one's, like, pretty heavy at times. Like, I cried reading that book. So, unless you've never read Emily Henry or heard about her, I don't know why you're surprised. This one, I do think like, it's the first one I didn't cry while I was reading it.
Yeah, you told me that.
But, like, tonally, the entire thing is very dark and kind of somber. There's, like, funny moments, but for the most part, the whole thing has a darker tone than I think even Beach Read has. So, like, it is dark, and I'll admit the cover doesn't match it necessarily.
Yeah. Well,
the title, I think, is funny that people are like, this isn't a happy book at all, because, like, I saw
really
the title Happy
so?
Place and was like, oh, that's... The title Happy Place indicates that it's not a happy book to me.
Well, I mean, because you've heard Taylor Swift's Happiness, you've heard of the show The Good Place, and it's,
well, I think it's more just, like, if I'm calling a book Happy Place, it's because I'm, like, longing for a happy place or searching for a happy place. It's not because I'm in the happy, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It didn't surprise me.
I just think there's a little critical
thinking.
There's a little critical thinking that can happen, that maybe doesn't happen. I understand the issues with Beach Read of people, because I mean, I too was like, what? I mean, like, there was like a beach there, but like, was I angry about it? No. But I could see people being like,
a lot of the book are the, like, friends going out and having a good time and, like, having their last hurrah in this place. Like, it's not all depressing. I don't know.
I'll be intrigued to see, because dual timelines aren't really my jazz. Especially
and that's the other thing. I think it's interesting you said Susanna said, if you like, this is good if she liked Beach Read. Because from what I can tell, I'm always fascinated to see, like, if somebody doesn't like all of Emily Henry's books, which are the ones that she does versus doesn't. Because usually, not always, I see people like Beach Read and book lovers, but not People We Meet on Vacation. Or People We Meet on Vacation is their absolute favorite and they don't love the other two.
Yeah, so Susanna's the first one, because she loved book lovers too.
Well, and so I so far have seen, I think, people who like People We Meet on Vacation will also like this one, because it's a very similar structure in terms of, like, going back and forth and seeing their relationship develop, and then the second chance in the present, which People We Meet on Vacation is friends to lovers, not, but it's kind of second chance. Like, they were never together, but they played around with it. They got close. And it's like second chance in that she's trying to get back to having a friendship with him. That felt very similar to me.
Interesting.
But
we shall see. I think I'm just gonna wait until the audiobook is available for me, just because, like, I'm drowning in arcs on NetGalley.
That's fair.
I have made mistakes in my life, and that's requesting what I have. They all look so good, but God knows I don't have the time, because then Avon came through. Well, because then Avon came through, so I got the new Megan Frampton, and then we both got the Eva Lay. Because I'd already had the Eva Lay, because she had sent it to me, because I had done the cover reveal. But, like, I don't prioritize ones that aren't on NetGalley, just because of stupid ratio and whatnot. But then once I got it, I was like, okay, I can stop edging this. And also the strike ended, so then I was like, okay, it's go time. And then people were starting to read it, so I was like, okay, I want to know, because before that, no one else had really read it. And so now
more people are getting it.
And then we'll talk more about it, but God fucking damn. Did you talk? Okay, I was like, did you talk about your book? It was Happy Place.
Happy Place, yes, which I loved, but I totally see. I think it's going to be her most contentious book so far.
That's what I've seen in reviews, and other people kind of having that thought. And it's funny, because, like, for you, I just normally know when you won't love a book as much as I will, which is fun, because it's like, I feel like you're pretty easy, not easy to please, but, like, you.
No, but
it would take a lot for you to not like a book.
Yeah.
So, like, with One Duke Down by Anna Bennett, like, I know every moment where it worked, like, perfectly for me, but I could see where it's like a 4-star for you, and, like, why it's like a 5-star for me.
I'm easier to please. Well, I'm harder to displease, but I think I'm also harder to, like,
to grasp on really, something and, like, make it, like, your.
Yeah.
I
have a lot of, like, 3, well, especially a lot of 4-star reads. It's harder to get me over that edge to a 5.
Well,
I think.
And you don't do half or quarter stars, and so
I don't.
You're brave for that. I admire you, because I just can't.
It's just too many choices for me. I get overwhelmed. I need just, like, the easy 5.
Yeah. So that was a tangent, but that's how I, like, view books for you. So, like, I mean, I knew you would love the Eva Lay one. I mean, you're a living, breathing Caroline that I know. So, like,
what?
I knew you would like it. Like, there's no way you wouldn't like that book. So,
well, that's true. Yes. Do you want to go?
Yes. So the next one I had is a historical romance by Teresa Medeiros. We read her around Halloween for another book club, whatever that vampire like book was. Those two.
After midnight or after
Midnight?
dark?
Yeah.
I think it's after midnight.
There,
I know
after
the other
midnight
one is
is
The Vampire Who Loved Me.
yeah, after midnight I think is the blue one, and that's book one. So I really liked her writing in those two books. She really surprised us. So then I read A Kiss to Remember, which was published in 2008. It's Amnesia. There was no way I wasn't gonna like this one. It was so fun. It was like Sleeping Beauty, Snow White-esque. Like there was definitely like the fairy tale element to it. It's in the Once Upon a Time series, so it's kind of like the Eloisa James fairy tale series. Basically is he a duke? Yeah, I think so. We're gonna say he's a duke. He's writing to a property that he owns, and his mother had lived there. Things happened in his past. You get in the first like prologue, I guess. He doesn't talk to his mom. He's been in London for his entire life. She had died, and she had taken in, I believe it's the heroine, and then like her two siblings. And so she had like lived there with his mom. He didn't know who she was or anything. She doesn't know what he looks like. So she wrote to him saying that his mom had died, and she was like, I can't believe you didn't come back. Like she's been asking for you. So she's like very angry at him. And then he is like, I'm just gonna come take your house because I'm kind of pissed off at you now because you made me angry. And so he gets bucked off of his horse. As you do.
When you're a terrible person in romance.
And you need to reform.
And
you get a head injury. You get a head injury.
You have to forget that you're a terrible person.
Exactly. And so she like wishes on like a star or something for her hero, because there's a clause from the mother in her will that if she marries before her like 25th birthday or something, she'll get to keep the house. Obviously she really had no legal claims to do that because it's his, but she was hoping. So she like wished upon a star and was like, please send me a handsome husband, because she had some standards. People had proposed. She didn't want them because the town was small and they were old.
Y'all are ugly.
She really did. She really did. And so she stumbles upon him in the woods, and she's like, oh my God, he's really hot. What if he's the sign? So then to wake him up, she gives him a little smooch, and she realizes, and he wakes up and he's like, and he's like, who are you and who am I? And she's like, this is perfect. You're my fiance. So then she takes him back because his horse.
Can you imagine finding a hot guy in the woods who is like, wait, sorry, who am I? And your immediate response is perfect. A blank slate for me to work with.
She made every decision that I would make. She was happy he was hot. She was happy that she had him now. Like, she was like, he's mine. So honestly, she was just a relatable queen. So she brings him back, and she tells her siblings, this is my new fiance, and we're gonna do this because we need to keep the house. And there's obviously like the meddling like house staff. Her one sister, her younger sister, is trying to kill him throughout the entire book because she doesn't want her sister to get married.
So obviously your response is to kill the fiance.
Oh yeah, no, she's poison, pushing things off of like pushing gargoyles off of churches. Like,
this seems like a reasonable response.
So she's in her murder plot. She reads a lot of gothic romances and novels.
I love a gothic murder ballad.
It really is. And then the younger brother is like really warring with not wanting to like him, but also wanting that like father figure. So it was just a really sweet dynamic, because this man wakes up, and once he's in the house, he's like, this is familiar because it used to be his house. But then he's also like, I have no, like, it must be familiar because I was your fiance and I lived here with you. And his main thing is that he's horny. He's like real hot for her. And he's like, you're telling me that I didn't have sex with you? Like, you're telling me that like I've only like pecked you on the cheek? Like, you're telling me that like I haven't done anything?
He's like, said, I have no memory of who I am, but that doesn't sound right.
Because she was like, yeah, we're waiting till marriage, like, as they would back then. And she's like, you were respectful and you didn't want to, like, take anything too far. And he's like, that doesn't sound like me. I don't know who I am, but that doesn't feel right. And so that was also really funny about him just being like, why wouldn't I? Like, you are so hot. So then he's, like, angry at himself for, like, because they had said he, like, went off, I don't know, to war, because I think he'd also went to war, like, in his real life. So then he was like, I left you, I was selfish, and obviously none of this ever happened. And it works out. It was really good. There's no audiobook, so I had to get the ebook from my library. But goddamn, we've talked again.
It's fine.
But yeah,
there you have it.
A Kiss to Remember. I highly recommend for a bonkers time and hijinks caused by children and staff, and just a heroine who's like takes the Tom Severin to Ariana Grande to Harry Rutledge or whatever pipeline because she said she wanted it and she got it. So there's that.
I respect that.
Me too.
I am going to like speed through the few contemporaries that I want to mention because I don't really feel like I need to go into detail on them, but I want to mention them. You didn't like this one as much. Do You Take This Man by Denise Williams? I really enjoyed. I ended up giving it 4 stars. He did not bother me. Did you end up going through with the audiobook or was that when you started and couldn't stand?
I couldn't. I got halfway through, realized that I was not judging it fairly because I hate Teddy Hamilton's voice.
I wondered if you had stopped. See, I don't hate his voice.
I don't like him. But I loved the female narrator. I was like, she's awesome. And then Teddy Hamilton made her sound like very young, and it just I'm not a huge fan of dual narrated audiobooks in general. So I had the arc too, so I read that. And it got better for me, but it still wasn't my favorite Denise Williams.
This also wasn't I prefer The Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams.
I like book 1, How to Fail at Flirting.
But I do think if you like a steamy enemies to lovers contemporary, this has the fun. I love like a wedding planner.
I love the wedding vibes.
Romance. I think that was fun. I really enjoy Denise Williams' writing just generally.
Me too.
So,
but yeah, I didn't hate it. To me, it was like 3 or 3.5 that I rounded down. So it wasn't bad. Just not the hero type that I liked.
That's fair. Well,
yeah,
I had a good time, and now I've talked too long about this one. We're speeding. We're going quickly. The Audible original Coming Home by Kennedy Ryan.
That's one that I have too.
It's a novella, so like the other Kennedy Ryan that I've read has been very like deep and emotional and wonderful. But yes, very, very long. This one, because it was short, it's a novella, so you can't get the same amount of emotional depth. But I do think it was like cute and sweet, and like it gave me what I wanted in a novella. It was just like a little shot of second chance. It had like the little marching band at the end with the grand gesture, which I thought was cute.
On my dual narrators notes, I really loved these two. I thought they worked very well. Their voices worked perfectly together.
They've done other Kennedy Ryan too, and she loves them.
Because my thing with dual narrator is that a lot of times the female narrators can nail a guy voice, but the guys have a harder time making the women sound mature and not like a teenager. That's just the thing that I have, but I thought this guy was great.
No, Jacoby Diem has done. I think it's him, right?
It is. Yeah, I'm looking at Goodreads, and then
he's
Wesley
done other.
Siobhan.
Yeah, he's done other Kennedy Ryan. I think they both did. I think those are the narrators for Before I Let Go. Although don't quote me on that. I just think. And Kennedy Ryan has said how much she loves them, but Jacoby Diem, he has a fine voice, and he can do the other characters too, not just his. I think he's the narrator or the male narrator for Real also.
Ooh.
He has a glorious voice. So that one was like...
Yeah. I think Audible can knock it out of the park with narrators. Obviously they should, because these are exclusively on Audible. So I'm always happy with the production. Really.
And typically for me, I think the sign that a novella is going to actually be good and give me what I want is that the characters already know each other at the start.
Yes.
If we're meeting for the first time, we don't have time. Usually. Sometimes I am proven wrong. But this one, because it's a second chance, they've known each other for years and they're just like meeting again after a long time.
And
I thought it was really sweet.
One that did The Strangers really well, you also just read it. A Walk in the Park by Rebekah Weatherspoon.
Yeah, I did just read that today, actually.
Yeah, I saw it on your story and I was like, hey, we can talk about that. They
also
went
Audible original.
Yes, they went and adopted the same dog because someone sabotaged the dog
shelter.
or the shelter because they had some beef with another shelter. So they like messed up all the adoption things and sent like, congratulations, you got approved to like double the people. And so they decided to like co-parent this dog. And I thought it was really cute.
Yeah. Well, that one worked because they weren't like in love at the end of the. Well, they were at the end of the epilogue, but at the end of just like the.
Yeah, they were just starting out, which I thought was really unique.
Yeah, I didn't need like a grand declaration. It was just like them getting to know each other and openly like acknowledging very quickly like we're attracted to each other. What are we gonna do about that? Like they're both out of relationships recent, and it was like very sweet. They get to know each other, and then by the end they've decided to start seeing each other. But it's not like
they weren't like married
super quick. Like, oh, we're in love now, which I think a lot of novellas when they just meet tend to jump to like they have to be together forever now, and I'm like, no, you're not gonna get me to believe that in a 3-hour Audible thing.
Yeah, especially contemporary. Historical, I can suspend.
Yeah,
more.
Even then, though, I'm like,
I'm a lot easier to please with a novella.
Well, yeah,
I don't have like if it like works for me, I don't need it to do too much. But I thought, and again, that one too was really well narrated, and he was like was he a singer?
comic book illustrator?
Yeah, because he was like a little celebrity. It was just really fun, and it was cuddly and puppies.
'Twas. They had their little Instagram, so that one was cute.
Yes.
The other, I think the only other contemporary that I would recommend that I read is Deonn and Kris Plan a Wedding by Chencia Higgins, which is a Black Sapphic contemporary. They are both on this reality show where they are paired up and have to plan a wedding in 6 weeks and convince their friends and family and everyone that this is their fiance. And to win the show, they have to like actually make it to the altar and have convinced everyone that they are getting married to this person. But of course, they fall in love. The entire is that in the history of the show, when you make it to the altar, either you can get married or you can choose the however many thousands of dollars. And no one in the history of the show has ever chosen to get married instead of take the money. And so one of the heroines wants, number one, to be the first one to get married, but also she's going on the show like to find love, whereas the other heroine is using it to come out to her family.
Oh.
So it's fairly intense. There's some like bigotry, emotional drama, being raised in religious spheres, etc. But it didn't feel super heavy. It was balanced very nicely by the like fun reality show vibes, which I don't love reality TV settings.
Yeah.
This one worked for me because it was just an interesting like frame for the fake relationship, I thought. It was like a very unique voice, which I enjoyed. It was really sweet. Like you get to the end and you're like, wow, I just love that for y'all. That's so cute. And the audiobook was really great for that one too. So
nice. One second, I'm gonna go.
No, go.
Because I have multiple, so I don't want to like talk for like hours in a row.
Okay, that's fair.
My next one is The Neighbor Favor by Kristina Forrest. Very simply, it's a new release from Berkeley, and she had been emailing her favorite like fantasy author, and he had been emailing her back, and then he ghosts her, and then he moves into the apartment next door to her. So it's kind of like not really You've Got Mail, because he doesn't like run her out of business or anything. But like you've got the epistolary element. And then she needs a date to a wedding, and she's like, hey, do you want to do that? And he's like, no, because he knows, like he finds out. So he's like, I think it's just best if we're friends. And she's like, okay, fine. So can you help me find a date to this wedding? And then the rest of it is just that's the favor. And I honestly didn't care about that part. Like, that was like my least interesting part, because all it was them just being fucking cute together. He like took her to Barnes & Noble, bought her books, knew what books to buy her. It was just really cute. And the audiobook was really good. So yeah, and it was again dual narrated, but I really liked the production of it. And I just think it's like hot. You have a favorite neighbor and then you like bang him.
Yeah.
Or not favorite neighbor, a favorite author. That's what I meant.
Oh. Also,
I mean, favorite neighbor too. I mean, twofold. Kill two birds with one stone. But yeah, I really liked that one. And back to you.
Like, I mean, you can do more if you want
to. I guess the next one I'll just mention was What the Hex by Alexis Daria. It's another Audible original. Audible original. Yeah. Audible original audiobook. I think it's also an ebook somewhere else. That one again, her sister was getting married to a demon, I think.
Sure.
And
classic.
So she comes back to her hometown and basically just like reunites with, I think it's her. They weren't dating in high school. I think it was like an enemy situation. And the reason I gave this one 5 stars is because it had the line, "I'm gonna make your pussy my familiar." So yeah.
That's fair. It was I think laugh in a man's face if he said that to me, but
they were trying to be funny. It was like
okay.
They were trying to be like over, like it was meant to be funny.
Understood.
Yeah, no, he wasn't being serious, but I took it seriously, as seriously hot. It was fun. It felt like a sexy Scooby-Doo episode. Like the way the way they found the villain and the way like everything happened, it just felt like a witch's, like I don't know. It felt kind of like a Scooby-Doo episode, but obviously like no talking dog and there's just 2 of them and sex. Short, steamy. I had a good time. It doesn't have the best reviews, but I liked it. And back to you.
Well, there you have it. The other contemporary that I forgot to mention was I mentioned it I think in our last episode, but All the Right Notes by Dominic Lim, which has been, it's like it was read now on NetGalley and is up for request and all that, so I feel better talking about it now that other people have had more of an opportunity to read it. But it is standard disclaimer, a forever title, and I work for forever, but all opinions are my own. Anyway, this is a queer male romance between Filipino and Japanese American leads. I think it's also dual timeline, actually, because it's not like technically a second chance. They were never together as kids, but it is kind of that similar to like People We Meet on Vacation, where like they were really close and something maybe was starting to happen, but then something dun 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 happened in the past and they have not spoken since. But now one of them is he's like an aspiring composer living in New York City, playing at like a piano bar. And his dad is like his high school's choir teacher, so he was like the piano accompanist for the choir. And the other one was a jock who joined the choir senior year, and he had to like help him sing and do these solos and everything. And now the love interest Emmett is like a big time action movie star.
Yes, I remember that.
And I think Quito is how you say the other character's name. Quito. I think it's Quito. Although I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. He gets a call from his dad, and his dad is like, I've decided to retire and I'm gonna throw a big like benefit concert. And I've already told everyone, because you're still best friends with Emmett, right? I've already told everyone that he's gonna come sing at the concert. So I need you to ask him to come sing at the concert. And Quito, who has not spoken to Emmett in years, is like, cool. Yeah, I can do that. And he just happens to be in New York City right now. So let's just go to SNL where he's hosting and try to get in touch. So it's going back and forth between like them as kids.
Yeah.
And them now as he's trying to get him to, like, well, not trying to. Emmett's a great guy, so he's like, yeah, of course I will, but there's like drama.
There's
and like
like
trying
hand
to
motion drama.
hand motions drama. It is very musical theatery. It is very sweet. It is a little bit, it's more on that like Emily Henry side of like in that gray area with like relationship fiction, because it is like first person, very heavily focused on
Gotcha.
but it is technically a romance. Pretty low steam, I would say, but like very sweet. That's why I mentioned it in the last episode, because at the end I sobbed myself sick.
Yes, you did.
You're
having hot girl cries.
Hot girl cries. And now I've talked too long about this one also, but it's very good and it comes out in June.
Relatable. So I've got 2 I'll just gloss over. Forget Me Not, I read. Julie Soto, you already read this. You talked about it a long time ago.
Yeah, a million years ago.
I don't know what episode, but if you know, listener, good for you. We don't know. That's also, like I said, dual timeline. Not my favorite book, but I had a really good time still. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting. The writing style was definitely new to me. I don't know if like it stemmed from her being a fanfic author. Not the book itself, but just like her writing style and how like things were laid out. Also the sex was really good. I did get a little bit nervous about some of the dirt. I was like, go pee, girl. Go pee.
Well, yeah, because this one is, she's a wedding planner and he's a florist.
Yes. My favorite parts of the book were just like the wedding planning. Because I was a lead caterer for 2 summers, and so like I saw a lot of shit go down at weddings. And so it just took me back, and like it just felt very like visceral and like well written. I mean, I was like, girl, you're getting yourself in over your head. You're redesigning an entire new venue.
She was doing a lot.
Risky. Also, that can go sit on a cactus.
Well,
I was like, I despise you, my ma'am.
I mean, does get her comeuppance.
She does.
I don't
was
know
so
if
fun.
That's a spoiler, actually. The villain gets a comeuppance.
And it was a great one. And I was like, ha ha ha.
There's also... I loved this book. It's like, I think it was one of my favorite reads of last year. It worked for me, you know? It was one of those. Also, again, standard disclaimer, it's forever. Yes. Where was I going with this?
Not a clue.
Why did I bring this up? Oh, because I won't say what, because that really kind of is a spoiler. But there's like the big climax at the end where like everything is happening very quickly because something bad has happened at this wedding, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
And all like it's a high stakes, like stressful, we have to fix this situation. And it was like I was flipping pages. I was like, oh my god, this is so stressful and I love it so much. And that man, so fine.
What did I say?
That was competence porn.
It was very fun. That's why I said like I really liked like the plot, you know? Like I wasn't as invested in the relationship. I think I wanted a little bit more of them like talking to each other, because this man didn't talk.
He is a silent brooding man.
He's a silent brooding man.
Honestly, I kind of respected it.
I wanted him to like get a little bit angry sometimes rather than just like stomp off.
I just think it was so funny that he said nothing so much of the time.
I do.
They'd be like having a conversation and he would just look at her.
Just walks away. He's like, okay.
Me before I've had my coffee, actually.
I think this one's gonna make a splash. So
I do too.
I think that I am happy I read it. And now I know what people are going to be talking about, because I do think people are going to be talking about it. And then I read The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. I liked it better than Mr. Wrong Number. It was still like 3.5 stars. Not my favorite. A little bit spicier than Mr. Wrong Number. But I liked the characters a little bit better. That's again, they meet at a wedding. She's a bartender, and he was the best man. And then his girlfriend thinks that he was like cheating on her with the bartender, because he's like, hey, I know you. And then they're like talking. But it turns out that she had like sold him his engagement ring that he bought earlier in the day, because she was like doing temp jobs. And then he like broke up with his girlfriend because she was like threw a drink in his face and thought he was cheating and all that. And then they have a one-night stand.
Break up with your girlfriend on board. Yeah. Once again, Ariana Grande.
Exactly. She's everywhere, guys.
At least everywhere on this podcast.
And I don't even listen to her. Like, I truly am not a like, I don't have anything against her, I guess, but, like, I don't listen to her. That's her impact, I guess. Truly is her impact. But then they have a one-night stand, and then they're just friends, and, they go on, like, all these dates and text each other, and I'm just like, my main thing was, like, why aren't you guys together? There's no reason you aren't together. Nothing is standing in your way, like, quite literally nothing. Like, you were already together, and then you're just trying to, because, like, her whole thing was, like, she didn't believe in, like, long-term commitment or, like, that, and he did. He, like, wanted a heavier thing, but normally in that kind of dynamic, the one character is, like, pushing the other towards love, and they're, like, not doing anything about it, but she was also looking for a boyfriend. Like, she was also looking for, like, commitment. So I was like, what what what
I don't know, but I
hot
will say,
hot
why is this
groomsman.
every interaction I've had with, like, straight men in their 20s? Where
Well,
you're like,
he was into
we're dating, guys.
yeah, well, he
No,
was
I'm just saying, like, that's no, not he's her in this situation where,
yeah,
like,
oh,
you're
yeah,
doing
yeah,
all
no,
that, you're going
exactly.
on dates and you're texting and you're and it's
Yeah.
like, well, I don't want commitment. And it's like, we are
But
literally
you have
already dating.
commitment.
If you just called
Yeah,
me your girlfriend,
yeah, yeah.
we wouldn't have to change anything. It's just men. That's
Th
all.
It is. That's exactly, how she felt in this entire book, because she, like, didn't want, like, because he fell first. I loved seeing him just down in the dumps about being real bad for this girl. But yeah, she, um, was just like, "If we take it any farther, I'm gonna lose you as a friend," and I'm like, "But you were also gonna lose him as a friend if you turn him down like this, because it's just gonna get awkward." So yeah, that's generally not a trope that I enjoy too much, but the writing was fun. Again, we've talked so much. So sorry.
It's fine.
Um, my
Y'all are used to
favorite
it by now.
my favorite of them was Pride and Protest by Nikki Payne, though. I loved that one. His name is Dorsey, not Darcy. And she is Lisa. It's spelled like Liza, but Lisa.
I
And
see. Liza with a
yeah.
Z, not Lisa with
Yeah.
an S, because Liza with a Z goes nuts.
Yes.
No?
No.
Okay. It's a Liza Minnelli bit.
Oh.
We'll link it.
Show notes. Off to a banging start. I just love the sexual tension. It was really fun because it wasn't like she was protesting his. It's if you've seen 2 Weeks Notice with Hugh Grant and Sandra Bullock. She's like protesting one of his like big architectural developments that he's trying to knock down. And then she like protests in front of it, and then he takes her on as like a lawyer. This is different than that mostly, but I liked she was against what he was doing. So he was trying to take low income housing and make it into more of like a high end situation. But she thinks he is a worker. She's like, here, take these signs to go protest. And he's like, I'm gonna burn them, because he like pretended to be what she thought, and then he burnt them, and then she was like, well, shit. I don't know, it was really fun, and I can't wait for the next one, which is like Sex and Sensibility or something. But there was like nap pods, and they had to like hunker down during a snowstorm and share the same nap pod, and he was so distressed that he had an erection. He was like, please, because she was asleep, and he's like, you have to move, and she was like nuzzling her ass like into him, and he's like, for the love of God, stop. And she's like what? She's like, what? He's like, and she was like, good, and went back to bed.
There's not much that's like really good about having a vagina, but
no,
not
there really
having
isn't.
visible arousal.
Yeah,
I am grateful.
Yeah, I do agree. I have a note on arousal, but that'll be a little bit later.
Oh God. Just throw me a few TBR things.
It's not Dick Down at Twilight. That song has been stuck in my fucking head. I'm angry at you about that.
It does.
Because I can't sing it.
No.
I'm like, Dick Down, no. Like,
no, none of the lyrics to that song are appropriate to sing.
No. On two fantasy notes, I read Sweet Vengeance by Viano Oniomoh. Basically, she summons the devil. She's like, hey, I want to murder the man who abused me. Let's make a deal. And he's like, let's do it. And they do it. And it was really cathartic. There are a lot of trigger warnings. I'll list the author's website with all the trigger warnings because it's the premise in itself is like she's getting revenge on her abuser, and there's a lot of different layers and things that happen to her friend and like a lot of things. So it's not a light read by any stretch of the words, but I do love sweet, sweet revenge. And a devil being called good boy multiple times during sex really worked for me. I think he was a virgin too. He had never had sex.
Oh.
So
there's a lot going on here.
There was so much. Because they like haunt him for a little while.
Sure.
Like they like go torture him by like showing up, and then he like whisks her away. He like makes her invisible. They show up visible for like a second. He like crashes his car, does all this thing, like all this stuff, and then they like go back and have sex, and then it's a cycle. And then her whole thing is like, I want you to let me kill him, but I want you to cover it up so it looks like he died naturally. So it was what it was, and it worked. And then the other one was just now your ex is Hexes. Nothing more to say. It was just a witchy romance, and he was a veterinarian. And I've had a thing for vets since Schitt's Creek. So thank you, Ted. Thank you, Ted.
I also have 2 fantasy notes. They are, however, not fantasy romance. They are just fantasy. Bloodmarked. I don't think I mentioned this in another. I didn't like it as much as Legendborn. It very much is like the second book in a fantasy series where like there's a lot of world building, info dumping, and a lot of like action sequences and traveling and introducing new characters. It was also very, very long. Was my other thing. It was like a 22-hour audiobook, I think, and I was like, this probably could have been cut down a little. However, it was good. I'm really looking forward to, I think that's a trilogy. I assume that the third book will be the last one. I really like that series. It's a holdover from my back when I read a lot of, especially YA fantasy, was when I read Legendborn, because that was when that one came out. So I don't really read a ton of fantasy anymore, but I do want to finish that series because it's really excellent. So there's that one, and then I also read The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi, I believe is how you say her name. Well, it's kind of fantasy. It's like a gothic dark fairy tale psychological thriller is like the best way I can explain this book. It's kind of like magical realism. Also, you've got like a kind of haunted house that is its own character. The premise is that the bridegroom is one character because it's dual POV. The bridegroom is married to this woman, Indigo, who is very wealthy and owns this whole hotel and everything. And they have this kind of whirlwind romance. He's a professor, very into like mythology and legends and folklore, etc., and she also is. So they have this whirlwind romance, and she agrees to marry him, but he's not allowed to pry into her past. That's her rule. You're not allowed to do any prying. But then her aunt is like on her deathbed, her aunt that raised her, so they go back to her house, the House of Dreams. And there's some mystery involving Indigo's best friend who's been missing for years, Azure. And Azure is the other POV. Oh. Like in the past. So it's this whole kind of like unwinding mystery with like the bridegroom pushing and trying to figure out what was going on, but Indigo's kind of scary because he's like prying into her past, and we don't know like who or even what kind of she is. There's a lot of like mythology and fairy tale references and things going on, and then Azure and Indigo in the past. So it's mystery unraveling. It was spooky a little, and I was a fan. I feel like if you're a romance reader, I actually think you would really enjoy this. Like if you also like the kind of like psychological thriller-y kind of things, because there's some romantic elements in there. I just have a lot of feelings because I'm like kind of obsessed with this book. I also really loved the audiobook. The male narrator is the same one that narrates We Hunt the Flame, that duology, and I really liked that narration. Nice. The other thing, the one thing about the narration is that it kind of gives away part of the twist. And if
I
you read
got
the book,
you.
you'll know why. But
Yeah.
even though I had kind of guessed that, you don't know how it. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of those things where you're like, this has to be the solution, but I don't know how we possibly could get there.
Mm-hmm.
And even when it was revealed, I was like, wow, I really did not see that being the way that we got to the thing that I had predicted. So, like, 5 stars. Very much enjoyed. I also just, like, love a fairy tale or a myth. And
Yes.
it's also just gorgeous. It's like poetry turned prose. If you like
Ooh.
Mexican Gothic, it had, like, kind of Invisible Life of Addie LaRue vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I talked too long again, but that book is really good. So those
We
are my
are
fancy.
who we are.
I'm sorry.
And just one YA note, or maybe just a few.
Just one.
I read You Bet Your Heart by Danielle Parker. That is the third YA romance that I've read by Joy Revolution, Nicola and David Yoon's imprint. And god damn it, every book they have is a winner, I tell you, because it was Unfairly Cute and Highly Suspicious, Queen Bee, so Tally Hibbert, and then Queen Bee by Emily Howard, and then You Bet Your Heart by Danielle Parker. This one is pretty similar, or like similar structure-ish to Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. They're both like academic rivals. They both had childhood friendships with each other that fizzled, and then one's back. It was like a very, it's a YA setup you see a lot. Two academic rivals. They're both in the running for valedictorian, and the one who wins gets the $30,000. And he doesn't show up to school all the time. He's not as meticulous as she is. She didn't know that he was in the running, so she was like, she was expecting to get it. So then when she was like, I am tied and I have to now fight for this, she was understandably very angry. And so she was like, I deserve it. Like, I don't miss any school, all this stuff. And then obviously they both kind of reckon with, the merits of the other one. They make a bet, basically why it's called You Bet Your Heart, that whoever scores the highest on 2 out of 3 assignments throughout the rest of the year, the other one will resign from the running. And then it kind of like gets derailed because then they get together, and then like where it's going because what she did and what he did, like where it's gonna all crash and burn. But overall it was really cute. I'm not gonna. I don't need it. Okay, we'll go to historical.
Oh no, we're not at historicals because we have to mention the 2 most bonkers things I read this month.
I forgot.
Then we can go to historicals. However, first
God bless
I do have
America.
to mention my not 1 but 2 hedgehog shifter novellas. Only one of them was erotic.
I need to get. You sent me a message that was so unhinged. I don't know which one this was in reference to.
Let me talk about the less unhinged, because I texted you about the bonkers one. The less unhinged of the 2 is Cute But Prickly by Zoe Chant. This one is not erotic. It is closed door, actually. But the premise of this, they're both shifters. She's a hedgehog shifter, okay? But she was adopted, and this is not a world where, like, shifters exist and everyone knows. This is a world where shifters are secret, so her adopted mother doesn't know that she's a shifter, so that's like part of the secret. But she's going through this really bad, awful breakup and ends up going to this like mountain resort thing with her mom instead of her now ex-fiance that the ex-fiance had booked. But when they get there, it's in the middle of a snowstorm and they're up on this mountain and no one's there because they canceled all the reservations and closed down for the season, but they didn't know that. So they get there and it's this empty cabin, and the only person there is the like groundskeeper handyman type guy, who also is a shifter. He shifts into a grisson, which is like a ferret weasel type animal.
Ooh, hot.
He is funny. He like pops his head around things, and once she knows what animal he is, she's like, oh yeah, I see it. Anyway, they're mates, so they are like immediately enamored of each other. She doesn't know that mates are a thing, so he has to like kind of explain that to her. And it's just like really, I ended up giving it 4 stars because it's genuinely so adorable. It's just like them hanging out, her mom being like, oh, this handsome man, like I see how he looks at you. They're like in this giant lodge that's closed down in the middle of a snowstorm, just like flirting and being romantic and being mates. And there's literally a scene because he's trying to like get her to shift because she lives in a city, so she can't do it very often. And he's like, that's not good, like you need to let your animal out, like to play or whatever. And so there's a scene where they go out in the snow and they both shift into their animals and they play in the snow together. And then they're just like in love. It was adorable. It was like unhinged, but also so cute. The other one, the like deeply unhinged that like I can't even really recommend because it's like actually kind of problematic in some ways, is Hedging His Bets.
And you sent me not only that he's a leather-wearing bad boy biker hero who shifts into a hedgehog.
A were-hedgehog, yes.
A were-hedgehog. And
embarrassed by it.
You texted me, his plan that he carries out to try to get this woman to like him is to shift with his cousin, so they're both hedgehogs, fight so he's bloodied up a little, and get her to take him home because she adopts hedgehogs, naturally. But his plan goes awry when instead of taking him home, she takes him to the vet and he gets a thermometer up his ass.
Yeah, he's really upset about it.
Yeah.
He's like really displeased by the thermometer up his ass while he's in hedgehog form. So the premise of Hedging His Bets is that they live in a world where like shifters are a normal thing. Not everyone is one, but like there's lots of wear or whatever. This book is so funny. Also, again, pretty problematic. There's some like gross fat phobia and gender essentialism type things. Well, fat phobia, but the caveat being that she is a very like large, curvy, I would say probably plus size. She used the term like, I don't know, fluffy or something at one point, but like she's a big woman.
Yeah.
And she's not really self-conscious about it, but at the same time assumes that he's into like stick thin women. And meanwhile he's on the other end going, oh, these bimbo like thin women who assume I'd be into them, I want something to hold on to, right? So it's like a little weird. Yeah. And also he's like weirdly macho man, like there's a lot of like random comments about like women know more about that, and I'm like, oh yeah, about family. Yeah, Sanj tweeted it because you're like, huh?
Was it Zodiac or something?
No, it was his cousin is the other hedgehog shifter in town.
Oh yeah, that's first and second cousin.
And he mentions that she's like some kind of distant cousin, but he doesn't know what the exact relation is. She probably does though, because women know more about these things. And I was like, what?
As a woman, whatever. I know nothing.
Yeah, whatever. The point is, he's this like tattooed leather-wearing biker in a world where shifters are a thing, and he laments at length about how other people get to be werebears and werewolves and werecats, and he had the terrible luck to be a were-hedgehog. So like shifters have incredible strength and speed and stuff in their human form. So he uses that to his advantage, but he basically doesn't shift if he can avoid it because he doesn't want anyone to know that he's a were-hedgehog. But then and then he's like super lusting over this woman who runs the bar, who like secretly is lusting over him, but in person is like, ugh, you're so annoying, Blake, like leave me alone, right? And he just wants to have her, and so he fights with people in the bar all the time to like try to impress her, but then he finds out that she has 3 hedgehogs, like she loves hedgehogs and adopts them. And so, yeah, that's his plan. He shifts into a hedgehog, gets his cousin to fight him so he's bloodied up, waits under her car. She's like, oh my gosh, a little bloody hedgehog, let me take you home. Puts him on her chest, so he spends a lot of time burrowing into her boobs. In his hedgehog form, though. Yeah. And she's like, weird. He's super into my boobs, whatever, he's a hedgehog. And then he's thinking, I don't really know what his plan is. Other than,
I was like, is he just gonna shift when he's at her home?
It's unclear. He wants to get her home, but she takes him to the vet. He gets a thermometer up the ass. It's not a great situation for him. She meets a hot vet while she's there who asks her out. So she takes him home. And the vet shows up, I guess, that same day to take her out on a date for some reason. And she's like, here, can you hold this hedgehog while I get ready? And he's like pees on the guy because the guy is like slimy and saying weird shit about the girl, but he like bites his fingers and stuff. So she comes out and sees the vet throw the hedgehog across the room into a wall and is like, get out, how could you, blah blah blah. Then they go to sleep and she naturally puts him on the pillow next to her because of course that's where you sleep with your little hedgehog. And she like has a sex dream about him and is like moaning his name and stuff, and he shifts back into human form because he thinks that she's awake.
Oh.
So there's also some like sexual assault in there because he thinks that she's awake, and she's like, why the fuck would you, like, he's like making out with her not realizing that she's asleep, and she's really upset about it. And then she kicks him out, but then he gets in a horrible motorcycle accident and almost dies. And then he continues to lie to her. So, like, I don't really understand how they ended up together. Basically, it's not good, but it is one of the funniest things I've ever read.
What's the time to be alive?
It's deeply unhinged. I highly recommend, even if you don't want to pay the, like, I think it's $3.99 to buy this novella and experience this kind of problematic, unhinged piece of literature. Even if you don't want to do that, I would recommend reading the Goodreads review that we absolutely will be linking, because it is actually funnier than the book.
I had a good time going through that on Twitter.
I talked for way too long about this, but I really think that we needed to discuss it.
Yeah, that's okay.
There's also a part where he like, so he's, you know, very manly and like has a lot of feelings. And it is made very clear. We are told repeatedly how manly and strong he is. But there's a part where, like, I don't know, he's lusting after her, and it says something about, like, something like awakens the beast inside, or something like that kind of language. Something about the beast inside. And in my head, I was like, the beast being a hedgehog. Like, what do you mean the beast inside? He's a hedgehog. Dead. Now we can move on to historicals, but I needed you all to hear about that were-hedgehog erotic novella.
We've committed ourselves to doing a full hedgehog episode once Caroline makes her way through her list.
I have some more that I need to read.
Yes. And then I'll read some of the ones that naturally have hedgehogs in them. I don't know if I need to go full hedgehog. But maybe I will, because it sounds like a good time. For historical,
it was a bonkers time.
Truly a bonkers time, and I can't wait to like change the little hearts in our logo to hedgehogs. Like, that's my main motivator.
That's fair.
I reread 2 Harper Collins titles that I don't think I'd really talked about a lot because they were Harper Collins titles. In Her Highlander's Bed by Lindsay Sands, and then Her Lessons in Persuasion by Megan Frampton. Pronounced it right this time. That one is basically the start of a series. He is a barrister. He is a virgin. She is a lady, and she is also a virgin. Oh God, I love him. Basically, he sees her at night. She's on this bridge, and he thinks she's going to jump. So he's like, "Not on my watch. I'm a good Samaritan." And he like tackles her to the ground. And she's like, "Bro, I was trying to look at the stars." She loves the stars, and he's like, "Well, that's my bad."
Honestly, me.
He's like, "I just was trying to save you." She's like, "No, I'm okay, but thank you." And they were kind of like hot for each other. The best part about this book is the male friend group. Obviously, they're all hot, attractive bachelors. Some of them I think are of the nobility. Like I said, he's a barrister. One's like a math guy.
Yes.
And
that noble profession, math guy.
The math guy. They were just the backbone of this book. They all had distinct personalities. They all just like ribbed on this guy when he lost his virginity. They all went to his apartment because she had like had to leave in the middle of the night, and he like took her home, and then he like passed out naked in his bed. And then his friends in the morning like knock on his door. They're like, "Hey," and then he's like, "Oh shit, I'm like naked." So he gets dressed hastily, opens the door, and one of them was like, "Hey, Townsend got his towns ended." And it was the funniest thing. And then the third act is my favorite thing ever. I won't spoil it, but they are all involved. And
I do love a like well-written group of men, yeah, especially in historicals. Like they're so funny every time.
They love each other so much. They are so supportive. They are hilarious. And like I said, the third act
with healthy relationships.
It took me out when I read it the first time, and then I listened to the audiobook, and it took me out again. And I have the arc for the next one, and I'm so excited. I don't know which one of them. They're all hot, so I'm down for any of them. But I like, it was very low angst. You know, her father had gotten married to a woman younger than her. So then they were like trying to push her out of the house and get her married. So technically it's a thing I'm not a huge fan of, when she's like trying, like someone's pressuring her to get married to someone of a higher class and the hero is not of that class. But he doesn't really ever think he's like unworthy, and she's not into it at all to like get someone else. She wants to remain unmarried. So it was really well written and it did not annoy me, which again, good for that. But it was so fucking fun. Her last few books have just all been like really low angst and really funny. And this one only had like 1 or like 1.5 sex scenes, because they did lose it late in the book. But again, I had a great time. And then Inner Highlander's Bed, I gave it 4 stars on the ebook arc that I read, and then 5 stars for the audiobook because that man sounded hot. It was a male narrator, and I had a great time. And he was just a very soft Highlander. Basically, she like got kidnapped by a rival clan. He was trying to marry her so that he could like then kill her family and he would like have access to her land. She got away by jumping out of a window into the water. And she was like all she was all beaten up. Highlander books, there's a lot of violence towards women. I've noticed that. And it's all pretty in depth. So if that's triggering, just know that. She was not sexually assaulted, although they thought she was, but she got away from it because she like kicked the guy in the balls. So she's technically married to this guy, but it's not official because she was there without her consent. And he noticed it. So our hero is out in the woods taking a swim because he's Scottish, so apparently he can just handle the cold. And he notices this naked boy stealing his like plaid. And he's like, hey. So he chases him down, tackles him, gets another head injury, flips him over. He's like, this is not a boy. This is a small woman. And she is very beaten up, and I have just concussed her even further and knocked her out. So he takes her back to his home. They have to hide in his room because clearly she's like someone important who has been like something happened, so he doesn't know who she is. She pretends to have amnesia. She knows who she is because she doesn't know if she can trust them because she's like, they may be friends of this guy who kidnapped me. It was just, after all of that, it was very soft and very sweet. He like, they both disliked pears. I believe it's pears, and he loved that. He was like, whoa, that's so hot that we both hate pears. And so then he always like got her like 2 of like, he was like, if you like this fruit or this fruit, this meat or this meat, and then they always had the same opinions, and then he like remembered what she liked. I don't know. It was a time. It was great. That's also number like 11 in a series. I haven't read any of the other ones. There's not like much connection, I don't think, like through them. People say that the entire series is great. And I do like Lindsay Sands' writing. So that was a lot of talking, but honestly, that was a really good book. And that doesn't even make a dent. What else do we have to talk about?
I don't have that many. I listened to Never Rescue a Rogue by Virginia Heath, which I feel like we've probably... I think we've talked about it before. I feel like you have, maybe?
I read it before I think we started the podcast, and I'm currently reading it.
But the point is, this one's... I mean, I really like Virginia Heath.
Me too.
I think this is a good, if you like kind of lighter steam, but like rom-com-y historicals. Mm-hmm. This one and Never Fall for Your Fiancé are both good for that. This one, like, it is pretty slow burn. It is pretty like, pretty external plot heavy. But the external plot is good. It's like a mystery that they're she's a journalist, so she's helping him unravel this mystery, and they're not enemies to lovers, but like they like to rib their families are connected, so they're like bantering and ribbing each other and insisting that they don't like each other, and their whole family is like, oh, they're in love. He is one of my favorite hero archetypes, which is the he's actually just a wonderful person, but he projects that, like, he makes everyone believe that he's a rake in order to, like, make his dad mad, but his dad is really awful, and so he's secretly, like, he's making his dad think that has this terrible reputation and ruining the family name, and, like, wasting all of the money, but in reality he's using his inheritance to, like, help the people who his father has not been helping, like the tenants and everything, and he's only using his own money to, like, throw debauched balls and things. So he's, like, actually just a wonderful, lovely human being. But, like, he's in theory a rake, and he's very flirtatious. It's just a funny, good time, you know?
It was. Book 1 is just such a screwball comedy.
Yeah, this one's less screwball comedy, but it still has, like, the humor.
Yeah. This one was a little bit quicker of a burn. It's still slow burn, but, like, there's, like, a voyeurism scene, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, they're, like, in the garden, and they, like, see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, like, a hot I mean, it's, like, kind of hot, but it's funny because they're having to hide in the middle of, like, a tryst, and she's trying to figure out what's going on because she's a virgin. So she's like, "What? What is right there? What does that mean?" And he is cracking up. He thinks this is the funniest thing that's ever happened.
And the narrator is really good. She does a great guy voice. This guy, he sounds real hot. And he's doing it for me. So I'm having a good time. I threw that one on just because I needed, like, a light background situation because I've already read it, but again, it'll be a new plot to me because I've basically never read it. But the next one is so exciting because I read The Secret Service of Tea and Treason. Oh my fucking god. That book.
Yeah.
I don't even know what... I mean, I wrote a lot of fucking words, but I don't...
Yeah.
Like, it was so good.
Yeah. The thing I find so interesting about that series is that, like, the narrative style of India Holton is very, very strong and very present, but each of them feel very different from the others. And this one has its own very distinct feel, and it's excellent.
Well, because she does such a good job distinguishing between the pirate mentality, the witch mentality, and then the spy mentality, which is also just so clever. So you've got, like, the pirates, you've got the witches, and then you've got, like, this underground network of footmen and maids and cooks and stuff who they all have, like, their secret, like, code words, so they, like, parse each other out. And they're all, like, a network of spies because obviously servants know a lot of secrets.
Right, the downstairs help know everything. So of course it would be an underground network.
And the title is so clever, The Secret Service of Tea and Treason. And then they have to fake date, intercepting.
No.
Fake
They're
married. Oh, that's even better. Oh my fucking god. Because they have to get fake married, and then they have to go and infiltrate this pirate. They're pirates, right? This pirate house party. When I tell you, I screamed.
It's, like,
so
good. The plot is so good, but also the relationship is so soft. Also, both of the leads are autistic. India Holton is autistic, so she's writing from her own experience, and it is so lovely and, like,
oh my god,
emotional.
I laughed so much. I cried so much because, like, they're so cute.
They're very soft.
Daniel, they're so soft.
But they're not soft. But they are.
Oh, they're little hedgehogs. They're both prickly.
True. It's so true.
I mean, truly, nothing else to say.
No notes. We'll be rereading.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if I loved it less, I might be able to talk about it more.
It also it does the same thing really the same thing that both of the other two do, but particularly Witches, which is that it's, like, very light and funny and romantic, but also both of these two, particularly
cuts
Alice,
your heart out.
Yeah, have experienced, like, really deep trauma. And I think the way that she handles it is so fascinating.
Deft.
With, like,
it's
very
so...
light. Yeah, like, it's very light and wry and witty, but because of that, you're like, oh, that's devastating. No, these books are so good.
And then they, like, they took turns, like, folding, fitted sheets.
They're so funny.
It's
been a long time since I've read it, so I don't remember a lot.
Yeah, because I was edging it. I could not. I was, like, so scared. But it made me question which one's my favorite, because before that I knew book 2 was my favorite. I don't know anymore. Like, they're all so different.
Yeah.
I love the cameos of them throughout the series.
Well, the cameos in Tea and Treason are so funny.
Oh. And like they all do different things, but they all like I don't know.
Also, this is the final book in the series, and like obviously no spoilers, but the epilogue in this, I was dead on the ground.
I'm still
She said, what if I actually wrote like the softest epilogue in the whole world that just like ripped your heart out of your chest and stomped it on the ground in a good way? To be clear, it's not like in a sad way, in like a
no, it's like
gorgeous,
the most wholesome,
so sweet. Yeah,
like they're all just friends, and they're all just living happily. Yeah. So that one knocked me on my ass. I don't know. What else do you got for me?
So speaking of this one, I really won't say much. Marry Me by Midnight by Felicia Grossman. And I won't say much specifically because it's not out until August and it's not like up on NetGalley or anything yet. So once again, standard forever disclaimer. But I will just say the premise of this one is that it's a Jewish historical romance, which it's not like the first one or anything like that. I think Felicia Grossman I know she's written other books. I don't know if they're like explicitly Jewish historical romances or not. But I know she's written other books, and there are obviously other Jewish historical romances, but there aren't like a ton of big traditionally published ones that you like see. I can't think of any.
No.
So this one, the thing that's so fascinating is that even if you don't read a ton of historical romance, if you're living in like America or, you know, the Western Hemisphere, you probably are familiar with like Regency or Victorian England, like on some level. Like historicals don't have to do a ton of world building because you're already like at least a little bit familiar with the world. So if you read a ton of historical romance, there's not a lot that you don't already know about the world. Because most writers are working within like the Regency or Victorian period, sometimes Georgian. Like you know most of the social customs and things. So unless you're going into like Sarah MacLean's like Underworld or something, there's not a ton of like new settings. This is fascinating because I don't think most people know anything about Jewish history, specifically in England.
No.
They had like their own very insular little community with like two different sides to it, depending on like when they had come. They have like their own kind of political, social hierarchy and systems. So the main characters in this are balancing like that divide within their community and also trying to behave with like Gentile, what's the word? Like manners to try to, you know, prove that they're worthy of rights.
Yeah.
Because that's like on the board right now.
That's on the board.
That's like a bill that might not pass, and actually in history it doesn't pass. But like because it's this entirely different like insular community with their own customs and language and history that like I know nothing about. So it is a historical like there's some that you already know, but a lot of it is like, oh, that's Gentile culture. So she'll do it because she's having these festivals. It's a Cinderella retelling, but gender swapped. So the hero is the Cinderella character, and she's being pressured by her business partners to marry within a certain amount of time for, you know, various reasons, backstory, etc. So she's throwing 3 festivals to choose a husband. And she's also invited like the aristocracy and other political like powerful people, but also people within their own community. And she hires the hero as like a synagogue custodian. He's an orphan who has been told his whole life essentially that he's worth nothing. And she hires him as a spy to try to find
that's gonna be so good.
Blackmail on the suitors so that she can blackmail her husband to make sure that he never betrays her. She's so manipulative.
Valentine Napier.
No, but like you're rooting for her the whole time, but she's like incredibly like manipulative and brilliant. And the Cinderella character, he is so kind. He talks to like there's a little family of mice and birds and things that he takes care of. But he's also like you know,
he's like a
he
sex
spent some
god.
time on this. No. Well, a little bit. He spent some time on the streets, so he's a little rough and tumble, but he's also so kind. Listen, this book is so good. I'm very excited about it, and I'm excited for when it's like up for review and everything.
Me
so
too. I will read that right away. I am very excited. 2 novellas. I think you've read them both. Thief in the Night by KJ Charles.
Yep.
You read that? Yep. Read that one. Very good. I loved the initial scene where he's like, I'm gonna suck your dick and steal your wallet.
It's so funny.
So yeah,
That's
all I need to know. That's what I needed to know. And then they get stuck together cleaning out the one who was stolen from his like father's estate. He hires him. And I had a great time.
Yeah. It's
I
just
liked
a good
it.
time.
Yeah, again, it's like an Audible original. I went through a phase where I just straight read like 5 in a day.
Yeah.
And God, that initial scene. I was just not prepared, and I was like, oh.
No.
And then the other one was When Good Earls Go Bad by Megan Frampton. It was he was the virgin hero, and it was the Valentine's Day one. I think you read that?
No, but we talked about it on the Valentine's Day episode.
Oh, well, you should read that. It's one that you'll probably give it 4 stars. It's like one of those, like that, like I imprint on, and you will enjoy.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the case for most like kind of light angst ones.
Yes,
are the ones
exactly.
that you adore, and I'm like, it was good.
Yes. Yeah. We can get into that in our next episode. But yes, that's exactly what it is. And then you have anything?
So I have 3 other historicals, 2 of which One Duke Down and A Rogue's Rules for Seduction. We're doing episodes on both of those.
And I have also read those.
Eva Leigh's A Rogue's Rules for Seduction,
Jesus
y'all. We won't talk
Christ.
about because we're doing the full episode. And also we won't release it until after the book is out because spoilers.
It'll be released that Friday. So it'll come out on a Tuesday.
It's really like I think one of the best historicals.
It's one of the best second chances I've ever read, let alone one of the best historicals.
That book was so good, and that is all I will say.
I simply was not prepared. I thought I was prepared.
I did too, and then
you'll think you're prepared, and then you won't be.
It's not what I expected, but at the same time, it's more.
Did you know that Mary Jane Wells is going to narrate the audiobook?
I did see that, yeah.
I did not know that. My ears are not. They're not.
Also, if you haven't already, like, now is the perfect time to read the first 2 books in that series. I loved the first one, the second one. I enjoyed up until the 3rd act, and then the 3rd act made me mad, but, like, overall, I would still say, like, read the book, if for no other reason than because you will appreciate this one so much more if you've read the first 2.
I agree.
So those were my 2 that we're gonna talk about later. The only other one that I read was A Reckless Match by Kate Bateman, which actually probably will end up doing an episode on this series anyway. So I won't say that.
Yes, we are, because you're reading A Wicked Game right now.
Yes. This one I don't have a ton to say about it anyway. I thought it was like a good first book.
It's my least favorite in the series. There's just something about it that was forgettable to me, but I still liked it. I liked it more once I read book 2 and book 3. I could come back around and was more connected to the characters.
Okay.
But
I thought it was a good, like,
they were in like a cave.
Yeah.
They like had sex in a cave.
There were like smugglers and intrigue and
like, it was like the family.
Whole premise of this book is that like the families are feuding, but they're not really enemies. So it's like enemies to lovers, but they're not really enemies.
They love to heckle each other. That's what it is.
Yeah. Like, it's all the good parts of enemies to lovers.
Yeah.
It's just like banter and bullying each other, but they want to make out.
Yeah.
So that was I read it in like a night because I could speed the audiobook up, and it was just like it was a good time.
Yes, it's a very like that entire series is pretty low angst. It's happy. Yeah, not much to say on that one. Obviously, we've got words to say about book 2, and then I think I'm interested to see how you'll feel about book 3. Because that's one that I think you could go 5 or 4 on. So
yeah, we'll see. I really like the premise of it so far.
Yes. And it was set up in a way that I thought it was going to do one thing and then did another thing, and I really appreciated it. So
interesting. Those were all of mine.
Nice.
A million years later.
For me, I reread the Fifth Avenue Rebels series by Joanna Shupe. I skipped book 1 because collectively we forget that one exists. You don't need to really know it. Lady Gets Lucky is a great book 1. We'll just pretend. I get caught up because I will call that one book 1, and I'll call like the other ones like those subsequent numbers, and that's not correct. But I basically reread them because I got the Duke Gets Even audiobook, and Tim Campbell narrates. Oh my god, he has a very hot voice. He narrates Christy Caldwell's what is it? Along Came a Lady, which is one I reread recently. So hot. But he also, so it's dual narration with the narrator of the series prior, and then with him. And oh, he's hot. Not my favorite book in the series. I think The Bride Goes Rogue is my favorite book in that series. But still a good conclusion. And Nellie and Andrew. Hot, hot, hot. So that's why I read that series. And then I reread the Duke Hunt series by Sophie Jordan. So that's The Duke Goes Down, The Rake Gets Ravished, and The Scoundrel Falls Hard. For no real reason. The Duke Goes Down is like a comfort read for me. That's I think the lowest rated of the 3. But I read it, and I've read it like 3 times now. And it's just a very simple, not much happens. Again, like I understand why people aren't like really into it, but I enjoyed it a lot. The Rake Gets Ravished. It has an ending that I wasn't a fan of. The villain gets to just go villain, and I wasn't happy with that. But the beginning is like a 60-page long sex scene. She has to her brother gambles away the deed for their house. So again, a wastrel brother, not a fan. But she has to go to the man who got the deed, and then things happen, and she ends up having to seduce him.
Sure.
And basically sex him out, so he passes out, and she can steal the deed. She's a virgin, and she's never had sex before, but
so
she sure reads
Judith
erotic.
And Holofernes is what I'm hearing, but she actually has sex with him instead of just getting.
Oh, she does. So it annoyed people because she has all of her education from books. And I truly did not care because I'm like, this was hot as shit. But I see where people were like, let's just move on from the get all of her sex education from.
I think that's
like she's
dumb. Let us have a good time.
I know, because I don't care if she's sexually skilled because of books or not. Like, it was hot. Because he was so like, what the hell is happening? Because he straight up said to her, yeah, you're not my type. And then she was like, but like maybe. And he's like, honestly, sure. and then she just goes to Pound Town on him, and he's like begging her. And then he realizes that she stole it from him because she left him a note because she felt too bad about it.
Iconic.
She was like, I'm so sorry. I had to. And then she didn't really sign it. Yeah. Because she didn't expect to have such a good time. And then he's like leafing through his things. He finds the
when
note.
You're
he's
dicknotized and forget that you're not supposed to leave evidence of your crime.
She really was in a haze. And so then he like leaves through and he realizes what's missing. He's like, oh, but that's after his maid comes in and she's like, ah, and he's like, what? And she's like, you injured yourself. And he's like, what? And then she's like, there is blood on the sheets. And he's like, what? And he's like, wait, I know what that means. And so then he tracks her down. And he's like, so you could be pregnant because I sure didn't pull out. So I'm going to stay here on your cottage, your farmland. She owns like an orangery and she's on like some land. So it's kind of like him like working the land. So he's like, from London goes. So it's like a nice small town energy when he goes there. Pretty slow middle. But I enjoyed it. And then, like I said, the ending kind of made me mad. But on the re-listen, I was less mad because I knew it was coming. I could just skip what I didn't want to hear. Same thing with The Scoundrel Falls Hard. I won't give too much away about that one because it would like spoil what happens in the other ones. But it was just really funny, and I again had issues with it the first time I read it. But the second time they were all ironed out because I knew it was coming, and I just had a good time. And then there's a 4th book coming out in that series later this year, so super excited. I guess the only other one that I really need to talk about is The Wolf and the Wildflower. The Wolf and the Wildflower by Stacey Reid. This is a note on arousal.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So this man, okay, he went to the Yukon, so like the wilds of Alaska, with his friend like 10 years ago, and he fell off of an ice cap.
Classic.
And down a mountain. And his friend it happens to me like all the time. I don't know.
So annoying.
So he has been presumed dead and or missing for 10 years.
Sure.
He has been living in a dark cave with wolves. He runs with the wolves. He hunts with the wolves. He kills bears with the wolves. He eats with the wolves. He's a wolf. This to me, I think Stacey Reid really just wanted to write a shifter romance. And she wanted to work it into where it wasn't paranormal. I don't know where it came from, but I'm glad it exists. So the premise is that the heroine So the heroine has been living as a man for 23 years because her father was so hell-bent on getting an heir. He was a second son, so like his wife was like, I don't know why you're so attached to this besides like your legacy, because he's a psychologist or like proto-psychologist. And so the mother, 23 years prior, pretends that the baby she gave birth to is a boy, not a girl, because she will die if she gets pregnant again. And the father is like not listening to her. And so you understand why she does this, but in the past they're like, it'll only be for a few years until you're like out of like your, so she could maybe get pregnant again after like 6 or so years, or she's just out of childbearing years. But she just gets comfortable living, like the mother gets comfortable with the daughter still pretending, because then it's just kind of like, it's easy, they've got an heir, the father's happy. But the heroine is she didn't know she was living as a boy until she got her period, and then her mother was like real stressed out about it, and she's like, what? And then she like found everything out. She didn't really realize what was different before that. So you find her as her like father's apprentice in the psychology, so he's like a doctor, like a head doctor is what they call him. And she is like his apprentice, and they get called by the Dowager Duchess to come help this duke who has been living with wolves for 10 years and hasn't spoken a word. And they're both like, what are we gonna find? How's he gonna be? Well, they show up. He's just very cold, emotionless, unreserved, or no, reserved, that's the word. And then he meets the heroine. They're in the same room. He like passes over her initially. He's like, oh, there's no psychologist. And then he smells her. And in front of his mother, the heroine's father, he like gets her in a clinch, sniffs her neck, and is like sniffing her all around. And he's like, interesting. Because he doesn't quite know what's going on. Because to him, that's signaling that she's smelling like a woman. But she's got like a fake mustache, and she's looking like a man. And he's like, I don't know, but I'm intrigued. And so then he's like, I will only talk to this person, and I will only deal with them. And then he finds out that she's a woman, and they just become really good friends. But the main thing is that he like just scented her arousal through doors. Like he has her move down into his wing, and like she knows he has a very strong nose because he was living in the dark. And so just like scents up like oils and like candles and stuff like in her room to like mask her scent. So that because he's like turned on all the time because they're living next to each other, and he can just like smell her. And then like one time he like dropped to her crotch and was just like, I smell you. It was a wild book.
Wow.
It was not my favorite Stacey Reid, but it sure left the biggest mark on me.
there is so much weird gender stuff wrapped up in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was bold or like stupid of her to write that. But
I know. Because on one hand, it evaded some of the woman in Pan's pitfalls, but it created new ones.
Like, well, it's not even. I don't know how to feel about the mom raising her daughter as a
that too.
boy, and then her not even knowing. But then, like, I don't know what that would do to somebody to be raised.
Oh, she also needed like, a therapist.
Yeah, it's like there's just a lot. There's a lot happening here.
Yeah, there was.
You know, I will say this. I respect romance writers that go balls to the wall. And Stacey Reed said, I'm going to write a hero who spent 10 years living with wolves.
And she did.
And you got to respect the commitment.
I do, because again, it's not my favorite book by her. She's writing an Overboard romance, so that's Amnesia. It's coming out later in this year, and I am so excited for that. She's like an auto request author, so like I will read her book like if she comes out with a book. And so I had no clue what this book was about, and imagine my surprise when I started it.
Yeah.
I was like, what? So if that tickled your taste buds, have at it. And if you want to stay away. I would not blame you.
That feels like the perfect note to end on.
It is, because that's all I have.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry for talking for a million years.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately after we made all those promises at the beginning where we were like, yeah, we won't talk that much about the books.
Yeah, we lied.
We lied to you.
We are,
to be fair, we also lied to ourselves.
Yes. Denial.
Denial is a river in Egypt. Your husband is gay. Anyway, I spend a lot of time on the internet, guys. Spend a lot of time on the internet. Yeah. I think we should just leave them with the wolf book.
I hope
Hedgehog shifters and wolfmen.
There are things in that book that will stay with me for as long as I live.
Well, to be fair, there's things in hedging his bets that will also stay with me.
Thermometer.
That's not the worst part.
Okay.
That was actually just a funny part.
That's mildly horrifying. Because the fact that that's not the worst part.
I mean, it was just a funny, he's like, oh no.
I'm going to bloody my little were hedgehog.
It's from her POV in that scene too, so she just thinks it's a little hedgehog and they have to take his temperature and it's rectal. And she's like, wow, he really does not like that. But you, the reader, know why.
I sure love dramatic irony.
Well, this was so long because we had to cover all the good books we read in February, and y'all know if there's one thing Hannah and I can do, it's read books and talk about them.
Yeah, we do that well. Yeah, and I can't promise that much will be edited.
God.
So just use those time notes accordingly. And timestamps and show notes. There we are. And go forth and prosper until Friday when you listen to our One Duke Down episode, which in theory it'll be short, but who knows?
We make no promises.